Always a pleasure to have you.
Likewise.
When Anita Dongre started her business with 2 sewing machines in her bedroom balcony in the early 1990s, little did she imagine that one day she would be dressing people like Kate Middleton and Hillary Clinton. Today, she enjoys huge success, but it wasn't always this way. As a young designer, her clothes were rejected. When she tried to open her own store, people didn't take her seriously. Her journey has not been easy. Yet, she didn't give up. She just learned how not to take no for an answer. Almost 23 years ago, she started with 1 store and today has 1,000 points of sale. She's gone international with her own stores in New York and most recently Dubai. She has created successful fashion brands such as And, Global Desi, Anita Dongre Bridal Couture, Grassroot, and the jewelry brand Pink City. Her company has a turnover of 850 crore. From starting her career out of a tiny space, today she works in a state-of-the-art, environmentally friendly office building. I have heard her speak at various forums, including the World Economic Forum in Davos, and the room, like this one, is always packed. Anita, with that, let me start by asking you about your own entrepreneurial journey, which started at a very young age. Can you tell us about your early days and the challenges that you faced?
Gayatri, firstly, when I started with those 2 sewing machines in my balcony, I knew that I wanted to create an empire, and I knew that's the first step to building that empire. In my college, it didn't happen by accident. It was a vision I had, and I think I worked 40 years to come to that vision, and I still think I have a long way to go. And, when I was very young, I used to think that when I'm about 60, I'll definitely retire. And suddenly this year it struck me that I'm 59. I'm going to be 60 this year, and hey, hell, I'm not yet done. I've got so much more to do. So I think what I love is that I still go to work with the same enthusiasm as a 28-year-old and with the same excitement to create and to do something every day that's different, that's new. Coming back to the challenges, yes, the challenges were huge because as an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old, when you've just started out, nobody's taking you seriously, especially not being a woman, especially not 35, 40 years back. I had to always underplay ambition because I think ambition in women scares people. Does it? Ambitious women, I think, really, people just find that ambition is aggressive. And it was frowned upon way back then. So it was challenging. I was never taken seriously. When I started the business, it was, there were terms like boutique wali, and it was okay to be doing fashion. Fashion was never taken seriously. But I always knew that this is the empire I want to build. And I did my thesis on big designers like Ralph Lauren and Giorgio Armani. And I always said that one day from India, we should have a brand that's as big as these fashion houses. So the vision was always large, yes.
Well, thank God for that, because here you are. This panel is about sustainability. So I'd like to pivot to talk about the House of Anita Dongre, which is known very much for its sustainable practices. You have been a pioneer in this space long before the word even became trendy. How did you kind of come upon this idea of sustainability at a time when probably, you also had a tremendous amount of pressure towards growth and profitability?
I think, Gayatri, sustainability comes very naturally to us in India. It came very naturally to me from childhood. Maybe it's my parental upbringing where we were taught to live mindfully, we were taught to use less, we were taught to preserve. I'm born, brought up in Mumbai, but I come from Jaipur. My grandparents are there. But, you live a simple life where everything is treasured, looked after. And I think with a lot of, when there's a lot of material growth and economic success, people forget how to be sustainable because there's just so much more to waste. And, you can afford to buy more clothes. You can afford to discard clothes sooner. But I think sustainability was at the core of whatever I did, which is why so many years ago I invested in a sustainable building because it was very important for me to work out of a green building. It was very important for me to practice social sustainability, which is taking work back to artisans in rural India because they live a sustainable life and ensuring that they don't migrate to cities. So there are so many aspects to sustainability, using more mindful materials. I think sustainability is just living consciously and living mindfully and questioning everything that you consume and everything that you do. And to us, it was always this mindset. And today, sustainable has become this cool, fashionable word. But I think old India practiced it, and I think it's still practiced in the villages of India. So I think we just need to go back to living mindfully, and I think that's when you'll be living sustainably.
But in a sense, isn't your industry the opposite of sustainable, right? Fashion is about the next purchase and the next outfit or whatever. So how do we reconcile that? This is always the big conundrum when it comes to sustainability and fashion. And how did you reconcile that?
I think making quality clothes and ensuring that the clothes stay in your customer's wardrobe for a long time is important. I just met this amazing girl here, Manika, who's wearing a kurta that she bought from me 10 years ago. And it looks as good as new. It's like she could have bought it today. So I think it's making quality clothes, using them well. And I think companies need to become more responsible. And that does not mean that you're going to have less sales. I just think people are going to consume mindfully. And I think it's important for the environment that we all do that and we practice those sustainable.
So given that we're here at a, business conference, what about pricing? Because do you then sort of factor in the sustainability sort of angle into your pricing, and therefore your pricing is such that there's a particular kind of consumer that you think you will attract who would be willing to pay slightly more for something that she or he knows is going to last them a lot longer? I mean, how does pricing factor into sustainability?
I think, first of all, quality has to be a given. You have to deliver great quality. And yes, sustainable can be more expensive. For example, when we use, say, a BCI cotton or we use an organic cotton, we're definitely paying 25-30% more. If I'm launching a collection, say I'm using hemp. Hemp is a very sustainable fiber, but there is a certain price you pay for that. So I think today customers also understand that when you buy quality, sustainable garments, you are paying a little bit more. But in the long run, it's great for you because it's great quality that's going to last you longer. So it's just being penny wise, pound foolish by buying cheap, fast fashion and not investing in quality clothes.
Right. And actually, the irony is that even major, huge fashion companies like H&M now have a sustainability kind of program.
Everybody does today, because today it's become more the norm than, everybody has to adhere to sustainable practices today.
So when you say sustainable practices, could you expand on that and tell us what you mean by that?
It could mean how you produce. It could mean how much you produce. It could mean where you produce. That one word can encompass so much of all what you do.
So for you, is it right from the thread to the final? I mean, you should talk to us a little bit about, I know what you do with the artisans, with the women that you have adopted in certain villages, and I think that became a big part of your COVID outreach.
It still is.
So could you tell us a little bit about that and the sustainability angle from that perspective?
So we started working with this wonderful NGO, Seva. They have branches all over the country. And we started providing employment to women who basically work from home. They could be doing embroidery, mainly embroidery. Seva does embroidery. And it's important for us to ensure that this work goes to them, because they live in villages that are 4 to 5 hours away from the closest city. And the work that we provide gives them a lot of economic empowerment. It empowers them, it empowers the entire community. We started this work about 8 to 9 years ago, and then we set up a lot of rural units in Maharashtra in partnership with the government, where we partner with the local panchayat, and there we offer training for sewing, and we continue giving them work, and we continue making them into independent units. We have 7 such units in Maharashtra. This is what we've achieved so far, but I think we have a long way to go in social sustainability.
Another thing is that, you've got these multiple brands within your portfolio. So how do you differentiate them And how do you sort of, you've got all, how do you sort of keep them in terms of how are you focusing on growth for them? How do you ensure that they are differentiated in the minds of the consumer?
Gayatri, all the brands came at different stages of my career. We started with the first brand, which was to create contemporary clothes for the Indian woman, because the Indian woman was going through a huge change. She was, going to work. She was now working. She needed a different kind of a wardrobe. So it was just sensing what the Indian woman need, and came for. I think we created it about 23 years ago. Global Desi came out of my love for Rajasthan. It was these beautiful, we started with a lot of block prints, and we started with these, it was just representing India and the color and prints of India. Anita Dongre Bridal, of course, was the brand that came later, because I always wanted to create a beautiful wedding line. We were the first brand who created wedding wear that's comfortable. We created pockets in our lehengas. We created light wedding wear. Before we came in, wedding lehengas were like 20 kilos, 15 kilos, they were heavy. So we started reflecting what the Indian woman really wanted, which is light, comfortable clothing. That's when the bridal came in, and then Grassroot came in a few years back. Just Grassroot is the brand that I'm most, closest to my heart. And in Grassroot, what we try to do is, again, sustain various crafts which are, which India is such a proud holder of, custodian of so many crafts. And we just try to keep ensuring that the craft stays alive in contemporary clothes that today's young Indian woman can relate to.
So let's talk about Grassroots, because again, it goes back to the overall topic of this panel. It is principally focused on sustainable fashion. So how did you come up with the concept? And while you've been building Grassroots, what are the challenges you faced as you're trying to, scale the brand?
The challenges are huge with Grassroots, which is why we haven't really expanded into too many stores. It's been the most challenging brand that I've ever created, because when you send work to rural India, and when you send work, especially handwork, to them, you don't know when it's going to come back. So we might create a collection, and we want to launch it in March, but it might come in June.
So deadlines have no meaning.
No deadlines. So we try to create in Grassroots very timeless fashion, which is seasonless. So when it comes, it goes into the stores then. So Grassroots has been a challenge to create a chain of stores, which I wanted to many years ago. We're trying to work around how we can get the craft and how we can, ensure that we meet timelines. So that's a challenge we still are working at, to be honest. Haven't found the answer as yet, because it's all hand done.
I want to pivot to fundraising. You got funding a few years ago. And how challenging was that? I think now, of course, retail in India and fashion retail in India has changed considerably from when you got that initial investment. And now the landscape is very different in terms of large Indian conglomerates coming into the picture. But when did you go seek funding, and how was that process? How difficult or challenging was it?
No, we honestly were not seeking funding when General Atlantic approached us. GA opened their office in India 10 years ago. They're an American investment equity firm, and they were looking to invest in an Indian fashion house. I really simply think that we were the only fashion house they found whose books were in complete order. So it just didn't take time at all. And the deal was done literally in no time at all. And we welcomed the funding because it gave us a chance to grow, and we really had huge growth ambitions. It just came out of the blue completely.
So you weren't seeking it?
We weren't seeking it. They sought us out. They found us, literally.
And the other thing that's been a theme, obviously, of today's summit has been technology. How has technology played a part in building your business? People sometimes forget how important the supply chain is for fashion, and how important tech is for fashion. What role did technology play in building your business?
Gayatri, so important, so important. When COVID started, we realized that our websites were really not up to the mark. Everybody was buying digitally. We, at that point of time, invested in a new software, which is Salesforce, for all our websites. It was a huge, huge investment. We obviously have, we are SAP enabled in the company. So we've always invested in technology. And I think today fashion and technology go hand in hand. So I read up a lot on technology, and I'm always trying to sit with the team in the office and saying, what can we do next? Because I think technology is extremely important for the back end, for the front end, for sourcing, for production, for the consumer, for all aspects of the business.
Do you think that today somebody who wants to start a fashion brand, they just would not be able to de-aggregate from the tech aspect of the business?
No, you can't. It's important. I mean, today we are truly an omni-channel retailer. If a customer walks into a store of mine, she can buy the dress in the store, she can order it online, pick it from the store, get it delivered home. So I think to give that kind of convenience to the customer is extremely important today. Because brick and mortar and digital has kind of merged into one. For her, it's one, so you have to be accessible to her in both the points of sale.
You know, you came up at a time which is so different. We talked about this in the speaker lounge compared to what people in this room have sort of experienced in terms of access to funding and just the entire landscape being so different in the 90s and the 2000s versus today. You know, we had the previous panel talked about growth versus profitability and how, at one point, everyone was just chasing growth and no one really cared about profitability, and now that's evolving. For you, Anita, were those metrics? I mean, how did you approach those metrics?
You know, honestly, Gayatri, we made the same mistake. We did chase growth for a few years, and I wasn't comfortable with just chasing growth at the risk of not being profitable enough. And from the last 1 year, I have realigned the entire company to only think profitability and not think growth. So for me, this is a year of restructuring and to only focus on profitability and not growth. Extremely important, because I think the focus should always be on profitability and not just on growth. Growth at the sake of profitability is not something I believe in.
And, what about COVID and subsequently with sort of the global headwinds we're facing, economically? How has fashion, we keep hearing about international fashion and how they're faring in terms of what's happening geopolitically. But for you and for Indian fashion, do you see, post-COVID, do you see things changing? Are you sort of upbeat?
Yes, I'm very upbeat for India and fashion in India. COVID was, of course, it was terrible for a fashion business to go through COVID, because you have 800 to 900 points of sale, all are shut down. You're still paying salaries, and this went on for so many months. And then there were 2 phases of COVID, so we are just recovering back from those really hard, tough times. But I definitely think the future is fabulous for the fashion industry in India, because there's this great awareness of fashion, great awareness of style. Indian men are now buying more fashion as much as women are buying. I mean, our menswear has seen an amazing growth this year. So I think it's a great time to be a fashion designer in this country. A very exciting time to be a designer in this country.
And, you are your brand, you're the creative side. Are you also the business side? Do you do everything? I mean,
Currently, I'm juggling too many hats, Gayatri. Currently, I'm chairman, creative head, everything.
So how does that work?
It's just a lot of hard work. It's just, getting in there every morning and having a to-do list and making sure you finish that before you get out of the office at the end of the day. It's a lot of hard work right now.
Before I sort of hand it over for audience Q&A, I want to ask a final question, which is, what advice would you give other entrepreneurs who want to create a sustainable brand? It could be fashion, it could be in any other industry, but this is the crux, I think, of what Anita Dongre stands for. So what would you say, to someone who is thinking along those lines?
I would say don't be in a rush, grow slowly, grow organically, grow sustainably. I would just sum it with those 3 lines.
Slowly and organically.
And not be in the staring rush that the world is in the staring rush to grow, 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 grow. Because sometimes I feel it's just nice to grow slowly.
All right, with that, let me, we just have a few minutes left, so let me just open it up to any audience Q&A. If anyone has a question, you could just stand up, introduce yourself, and ask the question, please. Okay, we have someone there. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dhruv, and I'm founder of a digital fashion brand. I just want to know about the early days of Anita Dongre. What was the customer insight with which you started the brand, and how were you able to build it out as something that's distinct and has this voice that we now know as And?
I think that's a very good question. I think one of the reasons for the success of House of Anita Dongre would be that we always put the customer first. I've always said that I'm a designer who designs with empathy. I'm always putting myself in the customer's shoes. There can be two types of designers. There are some designers who just design creative clothes that they would want to wear or they think the customer should wear. But I think I've always been a designer who's kind of reflected the changes that are happening in society around me, which is why 23 years ago I created And. Because I realized that the customer was looking and today wearing a different type of clothing than what was available in India. And all I did was to take, with my own aesthetics, that desire of hers to wear contemporary Indian clothes and give her that. So I think putting yourself in the customer's shoes in any business is extremely important, especially in the business of fashion, because I think fashion empowers you. Fashion, I always say that I'm not in the business of fashion. I'm in the business of making people feel good about themselves. Today, if you wear the right outfit, and you can ask any woman or man this, if you're well-dressed in the morning and you walk out of your house, you feel 10 on 10 if you're wearing the right clothing. So for me, fashion is empowering for the wearer, and I feel I have a great responsibility in making people feel great about themselves by just dressing them well. So for me, it's design combined with how you feel about what you wear that day, or for a special occasion, or for an interview, or on your wedding day. For me, how you feel is so important. So for me, it's always the customer. So I usually, whenever I'm creating a collection and I'm sitting in the office and I get models to try it on, the first question I'll always say is, how are you feeling? And most of the time, I don't have to ask that question, because the model will come out of that trial room, and if she's feeling good in that outfit, she'll come out with this big smile, and the smile will say it all. So it's always the customer. Does that answer your question?
Any other questions? Anita, well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I always feel like, it's when you say that you're the business head, you're the creative head, you're everything, I always just wonder how you get it all done in a day.
So I have a fantastic team, Gayatri.
Yeah, so I have to ask you a final question. I mean, how many hours in the day do you work, and do you ever take a vacation?
I work on vacation too, to be honest. I think as an entrepreneur, you pretty much work 365 days of the year, 7 days of the week. Because, I mean, retail is a tough business. The stores are open 7 days of the week. So I must confess, even on Sundays, I will take my iPad out and check sales reports. I will do some reading. I think as an entrepreneur, you're just at it all the time. And I love it. It's your passion. I'm blessed that my work is my passion. So it doesn't feel like a job because you love what you do. So to everyone out there, I think if you just follow your passion, work doesn't feel like work.
So that's a lovely way to end. Thank you so much.
Thank you.